Hey folks, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all who all are joining us globally. I am Parth Varu, UN Program Manager for Microsoft Reactor India, and I welcome you all to Teams Toolkit Tuesday by Teams Elite. Before we begin, let's go through our code of conduct. Yes, we are all here to learn together, so please be respectful of other people's views, understanding of differences, being kind and considerate in a way we all engage. Yes, obviously, we do encourage you all to participate. Please drop all your questions in the chat section. And now, I would like to bring in Kamal Shree, who is our developer advocate from M365 team.
Hey
Hi,
Parth,
Kamal. How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I am all good. I am at Reactor today.
Oh, that's really
Bangalore,
awesome.
in Bangalore, the climate is always pleasant.
Indeed. Oh, now it's
Yeah.
completely turning like a pink city.
Yeah, the flowers are so blooming and so attractive these days. Like, it's really good to take a early morning walk.
Indeed, indeed.
Yep.
Glad to know that you enjoying working from office.
Yeah. So, Kamal Sri, going ahead, like, what do we have for Teams Toolkit Tuesday today by Teams Elite?
Oh,
Would you like
definitely
to
we
tell
had.
something about Teams Toolkit Tuesday? The specific what we've been choosing this for?
Yeah. So first thing, I'm really glad with the overwhelming response that I've kind of received after starting the series. So first, it was more of Teams Elite, where we were just talking about Microsoft Teams, and then I saw the kind of interest people started developing towards Team Toolkit, asking, "Can we know more about it? How can we really get into it and start using this?" extension and start building Teams apps. So then that's when I thought, okay, let's start with this hashtag called Teams Toolkit Tuesday, and Tuesday kind of worked out for us. So that's why we started giving this tag, and it's more about using this plugin to develop your apps. So that's kind of helping a lot of simplification when you're building apps. So our focus on this series is keep toolkit and see what are the best features we can actually come out working on it.
Exciting. So, Kamal, the floor is all yours, and we are all here for the learning.
Oh,
Yep.
thank you, Pal. Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, so welcome, guys. Welcome to another series of Teams Elite and the season two of Teams Toolkit Tuesday. So, as discussed with Part, we have kind of received an overwhelming response, and people have asked us to focus more on Teams Toolkit. And that's why we are with another awesome series of sessions lined up for you guys, exclusively talking about Team Toolkit and how you could actually benefit out of it. So coming to today's series, we'll be learning how to create Teams tab. It's one of the feature category, I would say, like bot, chat. Tab is also another feature. So today we'll know what are the benefits of using Teams Toolkit. As I always mentioned, we are focusing on Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio and building Teams tab, whether it's like creating, debugging, building, or how do you go through each phase of it while building a tab for your app. So introducing your first speaker, Siddharth. Okay, Siddharth is a Microsoft MVP, independent consultant, freelancer providing services on M365, SharePoint, Power Automate, Power Apps, Power BI, Azure, .NET. I think the list keeps on going with his experience and the kind of work he's doing with M365, with Microsoft, and also the community work that he's going. Every week we have a talk by Siddharth, and he has total of 12 plus years of experience working with MNCs like HP, Infosys, TCS, and now he's an independent consultant. So Siddharth, welcome you again to the another season of Teams Elite and Team Toolkit Tuesday. We're glad to have you, and the stage is all yours. Looking forward for your session.
Thank you, Kamal. Thank you for the nice introduction. And yes, definitely happy to be here and part of this Teams Allied series. So as Kamal said, what we are going to do today is we are going to talk about using Visual Studio Teams Toolkit to create Teams tab, right? Uh, so this is the focus. Again, little bit introduction about myself. Yes, I am two times Microsoft MVP, and an M365 consultant specializing in SharePoint, Teams App, Power Platform, Azure.net. These are some of the social handles through which you would be able to connect with me. Today with me, I have Shrushti Shah also. Shrushti, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yep. Thanks, Siddharth. So quickly, I'll introduce myself. So I have been working majorly around M365 stack, which includes creating apps on top of SharePoint Online or creating apps in Teams, which we are going to talk about today. And apart from that, I have worked across many other platforms like Power Platform, Power Automate, Power Apps, and definitely Microsoft Azure, which is wherein majorly I worked as an infrastructure as a core capability. And apart from that, I also like to write blogs, and I'm a contributor in the community, for which I was awarded as Microsoft MVP. And along with that, I am 2 times CSharpCorner MVP as well. Back to you, Siddharth.
Thank you, Shrushti. Okay, before we start, we also wanted to talk about a Teams Toolkit Cloud Quiz Challenge, which is currently being hosted by Lucy, and it is again around the same topic of Teams Toolkit. Basically, there is a learning path in the Microsoft Learn documentation. You can take this challenge. You can complete the learning path on how to get started with Teams Toolkit to build your Teams application. Our Teams Elite series is also focused on around Teams Toolkit, so we thought it would be a good way for you to also explore this Teams Toolkit, be part of this challenge, and also there are some prizes to be won. So I would request, if you are interested, you can basically use this link. There is a blog link from Lucy on how to participate and what hashtag to use to make yourself kind of part of the cloud challenge, and this is directly the link to the challenge link. It is there. So let's see what we are for here today, right? First, what we will do is we will take a step back and we'll try to understand what are overview of Teams application. We will see what are different kinds of Teams application which we can build. We will also see what are the different ways of creating a Teams application, and then we will learn about Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code, and then we have very good demo and walkthrough of how to use Teams Toolkit by Shree, right? First, let's understand what is Teams application. Okay. What I would want is to understand that as of now, the way the Teams has been popular, right? So, as far as I remember, the last usage statistic of Teams is there are around 280 million users per month on the Teams application, right? So, Teams as in platform has been used or has been improved since last 2-3 years, wherein so many big organizations have started using this application for their collaboration and communication platform. Okay, and Teams has become basically more than just a collaboration or a communication tool, right? What we are seeing is we are seeing every organization who is using Teams, be it for file sharing, be it for communication, be it for channel sharing, and there are many different capabilities which are also introduced, right? Now, as we know that if a particular product gets so much popular, definitely there would be so much which we would get out of the box from the product itself, but there is always a chance, or there is always a way to extend that Teams that particular product, right? And that is what Teams app here is for. So basically, Teams app is an extensibility model to extend your Teams app, Teams, Microsoft Teams client, through which you would be able to add certain features in your Teams client, and that can be a new app in app itself. There is option for you to integrate something in the existing app which is available, and also what it will do is it will basically kind of allow us to improve the productivity and focus, because once we have our apps which we are building within the Teams itself, you get the context and collaboration around your existing data within your Teams itself, right? So it means that you don't have to go outside of team if you are able to bring your external application, your external data, or your external product within your Teams itself, right? Why do you want to switch context? Why do you want to go to a browser to get something outside of team and share it with your team member? Now, I'll give you a prime or a good example here is, for example, consider you are a project team wherein you would have your manager, your technical lead, and you as in developer who are working, right? And you might be using different tools to plan your task. Okay, it can be DevOps, it can be simple as planner tasks, etc., or it can be any other external tools like Jira or ticketing system which is available, right? Now what if your manager or you wanted to ask something on a particular task which is assigned to you. If there would be an external application which is with the outside of Teams, what we would have to do is we would have to copy that URL, paste it in our chat in the channel communication, and then ask for the status saying that, hey, can you update me the status, right? What if you are able to bring in the external product or external data within your Teams itself, right? So it will definitely help us improve the productivity, because we don't have to switch the context, we don't have to go to a different place to get the URL, get the data from the existing system, and then create a conversation or collaboration around that data or around that context, right? And that is what Teams app is for. Okay, so moving ahead, there are different kinds of Teams application which you can create. Okay, to start with, the first one is the personal app. It's very much equivalent to the second type of application which we are going to talk about, is the tab. The only thing is, depending on where the app is basically scoped at, it can be treated as a personal app or it can be treated as a tab. Okay, now a personal app can also be a bot, or it can also be a app in itself, which is basically a web application, right? Now when and how we will use a personal app is, consider you want to create something and give something to the user in his context. It means you wanted to give them a dashboard, or you wanted to give them something which is specific to the current logged in user and not as a part of the Teams channel conversation or the part of the team itself, right? So whatever is private to an user, if you think that your use case or your requirement is to give something and personalized experience to the end user, then you choose to create a personal app. Now good thing about personal app is that you can still create a tab which is, which would be available in the channel conversation itself, but by doing some certain configuration you can just enable that tab to act as a personal app. Okay, and what kind of design or UI elements basically you would choose while you would create a personal app is, you can use list, which is basically listing a data from somewhere in the grid view, tabular view, card view, etc. It can be a task board wherein you can give the personalized task board for a user saying that, my assigned task or task assigned to me, or a task which I have created, in similar kind of dashboard we can do. And then it can be a dashboard which can be as simple as just displaying the data in the chart format, or it can be as complex as displaying the Power BI reports within the dashboard. And then definitely there is form, so you might not always have an use case to just get the data and display it in certain format. You might wanted to use form also, right, to create the data, update the data. And that data can be within your Microsoft 365 ecosystem, or it can be also external to your Microsoft 365 ecosystem. It can be a SQL database, MySQL, or any other system which is there. Okay, I wanted to also focus on the screenshot which I have shared here. So basically, if you see here, what we have is, we have an app which is basically a personal app. This is the app which we have created and we have hosted into Microsoft App Source. It is basically, the use case of this app is like an internal classified listing app for your organization, right? Now what you will do is, basically you create some ads within your organization, like if you want to sell something, if you want to buy something, and then there is a my listing tab which will give you the data which is filtered by the user. So this is just one good example of a personal app which we can create. Okay, now let's go to tab are basically uh, again very much similar to personal app only, but generally tabs are added into channel conversation. Okay, and if you think about tab or a personal app, they are mostly nothing but a web application which is hosted somewhere, but it is getting rendered in an iframe within your Teams a thick client, right? It can be a browser or it can be a desktop client. Now uh, again, same thing, like you can add the tab as a part of your channel conversation. You can add tab within a group chat also. It means it doesn't necessarily need to be a channel conversation. You can also add in the group chat, or you can also add in the personal app for the individual user, or you can also add in one-on-one chat also. Okay, now when we say a Teams app or a Teams tab, okay, depending on your use case, you might need to get certain data from your Microsoft 365 to do certain things, or your application or your tab can be as external as there might not be anything related to Teams or anything within your application, but you would just be able to display that. Okay, now one of the good example, if you are familiar with using Teams, you might have seen that within, when we are going to a channel conversation, when we say add tab, it gives us different option, like do you want to use an website, do you want to add a power apps, do you want to use planner, do you want to use DevOps. Okay, there are different options available, right? Now what you do is, once you add that, by default it is basically adding a tab to the channel conversation, which is basically nothing but a Teams tab itself. Okay, another thing I want to highlight here is that if you are familiar with SharePoint framework, and if you have a SharePoint web part which you have developed, to use it in your SharePoint, again with certain configuration, you can reuse that SharePoint web part to expose it as in Teams tab and directly host it. So the good thing about having creating your Teams tab with SharePoint web part is that you don't have to host it anywhere. By default, we would be using the SharePoint thing, SharePoint to basically host that web part code. Okay, and that web part code can be reused in your web part in the SharePoint page itself, but it can also be used in the SharePoint tab itself. Okay, moving on, bot, very much familiar, and with the chat GPT which we are coming, I don't have to introduce bot, but we know, bot is basically also a kind of Teams app which you can create and extend your Team's capability. Now bot can be an one-on-one bot which would directly interact with user in the one-on-one conversation. A bot can be added to a channel, a bot can be added to a group chat, a bot can be added to a meeting also. Okay, now what bot would generally do, bot can be a bot which is basically a conversational bot which would where user would converse with the bot using some textual language, by sending some messages and the bot responding back based on some logic which we have already implemented. And that bot also can be as complex as wherein once you are asking something to the user, it might be internally calling some external API, bringing the data, sending it back as in adaptive card, also giving some buttons in the adaptive card for user to click, which will again call the API. So a normal conversational bot would be basically nothing but what it will do is it will be interacting with your web services, right? A bot can also be a notification only bot. Okay, there might be an use case wherein you don't want your bot to be conversant with the user. Okay, but you might want to have an bot which would be just a notification only bot. It means there would be only some notification you wanted to send to the user by in terms of the use case which you are developing. It can be a use case wherein you might want to send some reminders to the user, okay, based on the task which he has created or which he has used, or it can be any other notification only bot. Okay, by creating a notification only bot, you just have to say update a manifest file saying that this is the notification only bot, and user won't be able to converse it. We do have a detailed session in the same series in the next by Nandeep and Smita also on bot itself, wherein they would be able to show how we can use Teams Toolkit to create the bots. Now I'll go ahead and talk about messaging extension. This is one of my favorite, and this is where the real capability of extending a Teams client would come into picture. Okay, until now, whatever we have seen, we had that app, we had that tab, we had that bot, which is to the user, right? But with messaging extension, what you can do is you can basically add your own button in the in the conversation window in the Teams itself. Okay, now there are three places from where a messaging extension can be created or can be started. One, it would be within the compose area here. So whatever the red line which we are seeing, and then it can also be done from the search bar on the top in the Teams client, and then also it can be called from the messaging context. Okay, now to talk about it from the compose message area, what it does is it basically gives you a limited capability in terms of to get data from the external service or web service, display it in a small window, Okay, and the good example, if you would have already used this, the default messaging extension which are there, like the smiley, the gif, and the stickers which we are using, right? Once you click on it, what you get a small window, and on that window you get list of all the smileys, and you click on a particular smiley, and what it will do is it will basically post that message in the compose message area, right? And then the messaging, the context of the message, it is again very kind of a good example of having a Teams extensibility model. You will get the message context. It means you would be able to, once the action is been triggered in the more actions, you can show a pop-up UI. You would be able to get this message, so you know that okay, this message has been running in this context. Okay, one of the good example which are available in some of the already available in the Teams app source is, there are so many reminder messaging application which are there. Like for example, if you have received some message from somebody but you don't want to respond it immediately, but you want to set it reminder, so that probably you get a reminder after 1 hour, 2 hour. And then what you can do is you can click on more action, click on that app, and the app would remind you via bot to particular message. I personally use, there are app which is available like snoozebot, which are able to give you the reminder on the messages. Okay, meeting extension, again a very good example of extending your Teams within your meeting experience, right? We all know that most of the time which we do, other than collaboration, communication over chat, file sharing, etc., we use Teams for creating the meeting, right? Now, with the virtual world and the virtual or the hybrid environment which we have, most of the time we are spending on meeting itself, right? And what we can do is, with the meeting extensions, you would be able to create an app which is basically an app. It can be a tab app also, but you can add that app to your meeting. Okay, and as we know that there would be always three stage of a meeting life cycle. One is the pre meeting experience, which is nothing but when the meeting is being scheduled. And then there is in meeting experience, which is where the meeting would be happening. And then can be post meeting experience, when once the meeting is being done, right? Now, depending on what kind of use case you are delivering, or where you want your app to be shown or hosted, you can create a meeting extension app, and you can add it in either of three experience or all of three experience which is there, right? Some of the examples are pre-staging a Kanban board to be put in the meeting experience, pre-meeting experience. Then you can launch an in-meeting extendable dialogue. Okay, the good example here would be the survey or the Q&A which is available right within the meeting. If you wanted to ask or take a survey or a Q&A within there, there is an app which is available. You as in presenter would be able to just quickly use that app, create a survey or Q&A, paste it, and all the meeting attendees would get an pop-up in their Teams client, and from there they would be able to answer it. And the post meeting experience is basically creating the post meeting survey, which is nothing but, and probably a feedback loop or a survey which you wanted to take about the experience which is there, right? So this is about meeting experience. And then there is one way of webhook and connectors. In a way, this is an extensibility model. It's, we can say either it is not an Teams app, but the good thing about is that you can, if you want to do some quick integration with your external system, like for example, if something is happening in your Teams channel conversation, you might want to post some data into a webhook which you have created, right? Or if you want to do something in your Teams conversation, if something is happening in the external system. Okay, so like for example, if you create a webhook, and if something would happen externally in the system, probably in a SQL database or something, and what you want to do is you wanted to post something into channel conversation message, once that event has occurred, that can be done using webhook and connectors. Okay, now there are different ways to create a Teams application. Okay, the Teams application journey in a way started with Yeoman Generator, which is basically a tool through which you would be able to create the Teams application. It helps you scaffold all the project. It helps you create different kinds of applications which are available within this. This Yeoman Generator is more or less again dependent on the Yeoman, Yeoman open source tool which is available, and it follows the same guidelines the way we create an SPFx web part. Okay, then there is toolkit for Visual Studio. So when we say toolkit for Visual Studio, we are talking about the full-fledged version of Visual Studio. It can be community professional edition which is there. Then there is toolkit for Visual Studio Code, which is our topic for today, or that is what this series is about. And then you can also create Dataverse for team. It is again a Teams app itself, but the thing is that it will use your low code Power Platform products like Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agent to create the Teams application within that. Dataverse for Teams is specifically an app which would be created for a Teams team, right? It means you would get a capability of limited 2 GB of data to host your data, but you can create your app, quickly using Power Apps within that. And then you can do a standalone web development. So when we say standalone web development, it is nothing but any web application you are creating in any technology which is there. Okay, if you just wanted to host that application and add that application as in Teams app, it can be done. All you need to do is you need to create a Teams manifest file, and that can be done manually, or that can also be done using Teams app studio. Okay, so these are the different ways through which you would be able to create the Teams app. Today we are going to talk about toolkit for Visual Studio Code, because it is very much a toolkit based on which we would be able to quickly create and deploy Teams app from the Visual Studio Code. Okay, uh, good thing about a Teams toolkit is that what you have to do is it does all the scaffolding for you, depending on what kind of Teams app you wanted to create. Plus it does has all the setup which it will do to implement your integrated identity. So when I say integrated identity, it means SSO, etc. It also has all the framework pre-installed or the libraries pre-installed to get data from Microsoft Graph or from other services. Plus it also has capability for the developer to deploy your Teams application into Azure and in Microsoft 365 with zero configuration approach. Okay, so that is what Teams Toolkit help. It will help us to quickly create the apps with scaffolding, and we will see it in the demo, how it is done. So again, to summarize, like, it's an extension in the Visual Studio Code. So basically it is a plugin which you have to install it in the Visual Studio Code to use that toolkit. It will help the developer to create and deploy a Teams application, plus debug also. It takes zero configuration approach, and it also allows the developer to use then improve developer experience. Okay, so good thing about Teams Toolkit is that uh, you don't have to you don't have to worry about so much about so many things which are common functionalities which you have to do when you are creating a Teams application, right? Like when you are creating a Teams application and you wanted to get data from the graph, you wanted to implement SSO. These are some of the repetitive things which you would have to do when you are creating a Teams application. Okay, now with Teams Toolkit, what it does, it actually have all this code set up for us to do. Only thing is we have to just do some configuration. In fact, it also creates its own Azure AD app registration. Depending on the permission which we wanted to ask, it will also add all the permissions within the apps itself, and with that we would be able to just focus on the actual business use case which is there, right? I mean, generally think about any toolkit, any development toolkit which would be there. It would allow us it will allow the developers life easy, so that they don't have to focus on so much of detail into how the project would set up, how the files would be created, etc., but just to focus on the actual business use case which you are trying to develop. Okay, so now one thing is that as of now the supported app capability in toolkit is through which you would be able to create a tab, bot, and messaging extension only, right? uh, these are the three options which are available, but definitely the other types of app which is available would be added in the future, but as of now you can only create a tab, bot, and messaging extension through toolkit. Now let's talk about prerequisite. Okay, first and foremost thing is you need to have your Node.js which would be installed, and depending on whether you are creating your Teams app as in the standalone app or versus SPFx tab app, you would have to install bare minimum. You have to install Node.js 14, 16, or 18, and if it is an SPFx, you have to install Node.js 16 version. Okay, then you should have a Microsoft 365 account, because once you would use toolkit, it will ask you to log into your Microsoft 365 account, which will basically allow the Teams Toolkit to, once you run the project, it will allow the Teams Toolkit to open the browser, log into Teams client using that Microsoft 365 account, create the Azure ID app registration, etc., which would be required for setting up the SSO authentication, identity, etc. And then it can be there. So you need an valid developer Microsoft 365 account or a valid account where you wanted to do the development. And then it also needs an Azure account. Azure account is only needed if you are going to use Toolkit and deploy it via Toolkit to your Azure. Okay, because as I was saying that any app which we will develop other than the SPFx type of tab, it needs to be hosted somewhere, right? There should be a service which is hosted, be it a bot service, be it a tab or a personal app, which is nothing but a web application. It needs to be hosted somewhere in the server, and then that URL would be added to the manifest file wherein it will act as in Teams application. Okay, so if you wanted to use your Teams toolkit to also deploy to the Azure resource, you need to have a valid Azure subscription and Azure account where it will create all the resource group resources plus any resources which would be required to make that application, basically host that application from there. Okay, so now let's talk about an user flow. Okay, and now when we say user flow, we are not talking about end user flow, we are talking about developer, you as in developer, you as in user of the Teams toolkit, how everything would work. Okay, so first thing is there are, you will have two options, okay, which we will see in the demo. But you will have two options: either you create a new project or you start with the sample. Okay, now good thing about again Teams toolkit is there are some samples which are available, which are again kind of base samples which are there for some particular use cases which is developed. So if you think that you are going to develop an app, I would suggest you to first look at the sample and see that okay, is there any sample app which is already available in the open source repo which might help you to get started faster, because it might have certain things already been implemented. Then definitely what you should do is you should use that. Okay, then for develop and debug, what you would need, as I said, you would need to sign into Microsoft 365 account, and this is so that once you run the project, it needs to deploy, it needs to add the manifest file in the Teams client on the Microsoft 365 account, which you would do, and you would be able to test you would be able to test your application, right? Optionally, what you can do is you can also uh, edit the manifest file or add different capabilities which are available. If you want to provision in the cloud, what you need to sign into Azure. It means you need to have a valid Azure account and you need to sign into the Azure Excel. Okay, optionally, what you can do is you can also add your cloud resources, you can validate the manifest file, you can zip the Teams metadata package, which is basically the manifest file, to create the Teams package, which you would need to upload it as in side loading, or you need to upload into Teams administrator, or if you want to upload publish it into Microsoft App Source, that is what you would need, right? And then you deploy it to the cloud, right? So when we say provision and deploy, both are different, right? So provision would only provision the resources which would be required to host your application, but the cloud deployment would be wherein you would be actually doing the deployment. Okay, and once all of this is done, you can set up your CI/CD pipeline to publish the app to the teams. Okay, like as soon as you commit the code, etc., to do it, or you can direct publish it to the team. Okay, so this is overall you as in developer who wanted to use Teams toolkit, definitely would help you to see what are the different capabilities available within Teams toolkit to basically go and start getting started your journey using Teams toolkit. Now with this, I would like to hand it over to Shrushti to walk us through the toolkit and see the Teams application in action, how to publish it, what are the different uh, project structures, files which will be created under the hood. Uh, she would be demoing us. So over to you, Srishti, Kamal. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Siddharth, for that awesome overview of what are the features available and where to use, when to use. I do have questions, so I'm going to keep it to the end because I'm really excited to see the demo of what Shrushti is going to walk through. So before that, I'll just have a quick introduction of Shrushti. Shrushti is again a Microsoft MVP with 5+ years of experience working with Microsoft technology, SharePoint, and she's also got a lot of expertise in building and developing modern workplace application. She's part of the community very actively, giving talks related to 365. whether it is Graph, Azure Identity or Microsoft. And she's also a national and international conference speaker. So welcome, Shrushti. Looking forward to your demo. And yeah, the stage is all yours.
Thanks, Kamal, for a nice introduction. I will quickly share my screen and give me a minute. Yeah, you all can see it.
I think it's still processing. Yes, now I can.
Okay. So just to give you all, I hope you must have gone through a lot of content which Siddharth has just now elaborated upon, which is creating applications, which is Teams apps using Teams Toolkit. But maybe some of you might be familiar with what Teams Toolkit is, or some of you might not be. So I'll quickly give you a quick overview about what you will need before you start developing Teams-based applications using Teams Toolkit. First things first, you will need a Teams Toolkit extension to be installed into your Visual Studio Code. So if you can just Google it, or if not, we'll post this in the chat window or in the comment section where you can go ahead and pick up this extension, install it into your Visual Studio Code. Once you install it, all you have to do is you need only M365 developer account, as it is mentioned here. You can just go through this prerequisites form, which Siddharth already covered. You will need a Node.js installed. If you are using SPFx solution, which you want to migrate it as a Teams app, then you will need a version 16.x. If not, if you are creating just Teams-based application, then 14.16. Or 18. Version will work fine. Apart from that, you will need a Microsoft 365 account. Many times what happens is users are not aware about how they can get the Microsoft 365 account if they don't have an organization account already tied to their username. What you can do is, I already have added a link which we'll post it later. This is a Microsoft developer program which allows you to create your own developer account, wherein you can go ahead and create your demos or POCs or play around with this account. And this is a sandbox account which Microsoft gives you so that you can create applications or use cases on top of it. You can leverage this, or else if you have already an organization account which has Teams enabled, you can use that as well. Next, you will need an Azure account. So just like Siddharth mentioned in the previous slide, that Teams Toolkit requires an Azure account. Why? Because definitely your app, which is a Teams solution, is kind of a web application, which is, let's say, a website or a Azure, any website which is hosted on an iframe. So that will be hosted to your Azure inside a web management as Azure service. So this will be hosted there into your Azure, so that anytime you can go ahead and start working on your applications without worrying about where you can host your team solution. Now let's just go ahead and look at Teams Toolkit. I will go to my Visual Studio Code. As you can see, I already have a Visual Studio Code open. And what I'll do is I'll go to the extensions and how you can find Teams Toolkit. I'll search Teams Toolkit in the search bar. You will see a verified application from Microsoft. This is the verified Teams Toolkit which you have to use. And if I just scroll this command bar, yeah, I'll hide that. So as you can see, you are going to see the same README file. This is a help for helping as an end user. You can go ahead and read out what Teams Toolkit is, how you can use it, what are the features it provides, the change log. You don't have to worry about it, but it is just that what are the new features added, and they are just keeping a change log of it. Dependencies. So right now, as I mentioned, I have a Microsoft and Azure account, so you'll need that. So that is dependency added. And in details, you will find the similar documentation which we just now saw. Now, what we'll do is once you install this, what you will see is in the left navigation, you will start seeing a Teams Toolkit icon. When I click on it, you will see a beautiful panel open. Now, why Teams Toolkit was designed, I would just give a one or two liner explanation on that. So basically what used to happen is when I started development few years back with SharePoint Online and recently with your Teams when it came. So what used to happen, we used to spend a lot of time on configurations such as installing Node.js, installing NPM, and the dependencies like your team dependency or your YAML generators, so that you scaffold your application, right? These all steps we had to take so that we can finally get a project wherein you can start working on development. And to configure that, you have to install some of the packages and everything. So what Teams Toolkit does is it lowers that time span for you. It has got everything at one place so that you don't have to worry about installing the dependencies or configurations, or having some another command bar wherein you can go ahead and type in your commands and remembering those commands and so on and so forth. So it is reducing that gap so that highly you can and efficiently you can focus all your attention to the coding and logic and building a business scenario on top of it. So that is why Teams Toolkit was designed. So now when you can see, I have the panel open in the left navigation. I'll just zoom if it is possible. Not sure. No, it is not possible. So right now, what you can see is I have accounts section, environment, development, oops, yeah, development, deployment, and help and feedback. So let's just go to this Toolkit section one by one. Account section. So as we already talked about it, you will need a N365, which is a Microsoft account. But you have to keep one more thing in mind. It is not just that you have a N365 account and you will be able to deploy your Teams apps from this toolkit. So there are two ways of deploying apps. One is either you deploy it from your Teams toolkit. So as you can see in the deployment section, I can publish directly to the Teams, or else I can create a zip package. So ideally, you would, when you work with Teams application, you must know that there is a zip package. That zip package consists of 3 files. Two are the logo files, which are PNG in different sizes, and the other file is your manifest file, which is the heart of your Teams application, as you can see. So when you, if you don't have, say, let's say you are not a Teams admin and you don't have a side loading enabled to your Teams account or an M365 account. So what you can do is you can either take a zip of your Teams package or a project which you have created, and then give it to your Teams admin so that they will upload this application to the Teams admin, and then you can see the app into your Teams app store, and then you can play around and work with it. But if you are doing a POC or if you are developing, then definitely it is recommended that you enable your side loading into your M365 account. I'll come to that later, that what side loading is and how you can enable it. But just keep in mind, if you have a Microsoft 365 account, make sure that side loading is enabled if you want to debug and test it along with development. Next is your Microsoft Azure account. Now, why would I need a Azure account? You would question that. But that is what I mentioned previously. And when you walk through this code structure, you will understand that we are hosting these resources, this tab in the form of a web in Azure. So that is why you will need an Azure account to host it to host your application. Next section we'll go is the environment. Now, this is the beautiful part about Teams Toolkit. So let's say you are developing an application, and then that will go to a UAT, and then maybe it is going to go to the production, right? Ideally, we work in a similar fashion, which is agile. First you develop, then you go to UAT, and then that application is hosted to production environment. So how you can maintain those configurations for each of your environment? This is how Teams Toolkit gives you the flexibility. You can maintain environments differentially. So as you can see, I have one local environment, dev environment, and I can also add production environment. So how this will be useful for me is dev environment. So whenever I'll run the application or deploy the application using dev environment, so that I can try and test it in my developer tenant. If I am so that I don't make changes or any configuration changes or the secrets or tenant ID or all those values which we are concerned about, we don't mix those into the environments. Hence, it is giving you the flexibility to maintain different environments. So this is how you can work on your dev, and then when it is the time to deploy in production, you can maintain a separate environment for prod. You can enter the name here, whatever name you want to give for the environment, and then you can start deploying your application there. For now, I just have created this a demo for dev. Maybe later on, if you have any questions, we can take up that later, how you can create or deploy there. Next section is development. This is the most important section. What happens is when you are creating an application, or if you are a React developer or Angular developer, and you are just worried about, or you just know how you can develop the application from scratch using React, JavaScript, HTML, CSS. So what you can do is you can create a new app. But just like what Siddharth mentioned, is there is a beautiful repository of samples these are kind of a baseline wherein it helps you to get started. If let's say you don't know how Teams application works, what are the libraries which I have to use, then it is recommended that you go ahead and view the samples which Teams Toolkit provides. So if I click on view samples, what I can see is I can see the different samples. These are the GitHub repositories which you can find, and you can also see that it is tagged to some or the other type of application. So as you can see, this is a tab which is created with TypeScript, and it is using Azure functions. Another thing is it is just a plain tab which is just a type JavaScript tab. There are different versions of each samples. So what you can do is how I started creating the applications, and I always try to use samples. First thing is because I get the underlining base structure ready, when using which I can just create fancy UI, or whatever business scenario I have, I can start building that on top of it. So what happens is I don't have to worry about, oh, something in my deployment or development is missed, or I am missing some or the other configuration steps. I don't have to worry about that at all, because this sample provides you the whole file structure with you. If not, then definitely if you are more comfortable using or creating your own app package or app folder, then you can do that. How you can do is you can create a new app, and it will ask you that how you want to create it. Either you can create from blank or from a sample. So once I go through this toolkit, I'll quickly pick up a sample, and we'll walk through about how you can how the each file structure looks like, and how I can deploy and test it on Teams. Once the sample is done, you also have some how to guides. This is just a documentation you can refer. Another beautiful feature is, let's say I have a tab. I created a tab which is JavaScript tab for a meeting. Let's say this is a JavaScript tab which I created. Now I want to add a bot capability to this tab. How I can do that? I don't have any sample for it. What you can do is you can add features on top of it. On clicking of add features, it asks you that what feature you want to add it to your existing solution, either a tab or bot or messaging extension. Or many times what happens is there are different Azure solutions. So let's say I created a bot, but I want to create a bot not using server side API, but I want to create using Azure function, because I have my API written in Azure function. Then you can create or add a feature of Azure function, which will wherein you can start writing your APIs which you created for bot, and then you can integrate that with the tab by using APIs and sort of anything. So something like this, you can also have Key Vault to maintain your secrets, because right now what we are doing is we are just adding that secrets openly without adding it in the Key Vault. SQL database, because you might have a ton of data which is located in some on-premise or wherever it is located, and you want that data to interact with the tab, then definitely you will need a solution wherein you can host that data, which is Azure SQL database. You can use that. API management, Azure functions, anything. All these features are rightly available. You can use that. All the bot, tab, and messaging extension features. Apart from that, few other toppings you can see is single sign-on, wherein where we talk about how you can authenticate your application when it comes to using graph APIs. That is when you start using single sign-on. And CI/CD workflows. This is when you want your application to be held into the production, or this application will be deployed to the production using your YAML pipelines. You have to integrate CI/CD with it, so that after writing few lines of YAML code, you will just be able to deploy your solution to the different environments. So this is how the features they provide, which toolkit provide, I mean. So let's just go ahead, and deployment you will not understand right now until and unless I start going to the code. So what I did is I picked up a sample which is a meeting extension sample, so that you get some idea, because tabs are basically just similar to meeting extension is a tab which is hosted. It can be considered as a pre-meeting tab, but also you can use it inside the meeting and as a post-meeting experience. I'll come to that at the end. So I'll just walk through up this code structure, repository structure. You can see here is, as soon as I added the this solution into my folder, which is Hello World in Meeting 3, you can see the different folders, which is FX, VS Code, Build, and Tabs. And there is a template. This template will hold your zip package. And there is another section called Azure. This Azure is only used, and this will only hold your bicep files. So when I talk about bicep files, for those who do not know, bicep files are basically, these are something similar to your ARM templates. uh, because biceps is created on top of arm template. If you don't know what arm template, then to keep it very simple, so you have your Azure resources, you want to deploy that to your Azure environment. There are different ways of deploying or provisioning Azure resources. One is either using PowerShell code, or using ARM template, or using Bicep. Bicep means you have to write a code which is in the JSON format, and that JSON format, this will be deployed using one line of PowerShell code. This file will be deployed and it will provision Azure resource for me in the Azure environment. So when you say see an Azure package, your Azure folder, this will only hold all your provisioning files. You can see your main file. This is a main kind of file, which is having some Azure resource, and this is a provision file. This is holding front end hosting, which is our tab, and the identity, which is a user assigned identity or system assigned identity. Right now we are hosting two resources. One is front end hosting, other is identity bicep. So as you can see from the screen, that this is a simple JSON, and this is kind of a main file. This is a main file. It is calling a provision file, and these are the two resources actually which is going to be deployed. So this is front end hosting, which is using your storage account, and the identity, definitely this is the identity file. So these two resources are getting deployed using main file. So this is how this what happens is, when you go to deployment and when you click on provision in the cloud, nothing happens. It only takes up your Azure folder and deploys it to your Azure environment. So if you want to see that, I can quickly show it. When I clicked on Azure provision in the cloud, so this is provision in the cloud, it will only deploy my Azure resources. It is not going to do anything else. So as you can see, this is the user assigned manager identity, and this is the storage account. It deployed that for me. Now, how I identified these files? You would have that question, right? We'll come to it. Let's see that. So you understood now what Azure does and what exactly provisioning means now when you say provision the cloud. Now let's look at the code structure in more detail, which is our main area of focus. FX is basically, this is kind of your local version. So what local version, as in it is holding all your strings and all your variables. That is what you can assume. So now you can say this is a states file where it is holding a JSON of subscription. So right now the subscription which I have added for Azure, it is holding those details. Now if I click over here, you'll see a dev. Because I have an environment called dev, it is hosting the details of dev. I did not add anything here. A single data was not added by me. What it did is it created a version for me. This file structure was created for me. How it was created? When I created a sample and linked my Azure, linked my these two profiles, M365 and Azure, it took those details based on the recommendations. It started showing up there. Now what I'll do is I'll go to different section, which is configurations. In configuration, so I hope you got an idea about what states is doing. State is maintaining a state file for each of your environment, wherein you will be seeing different your solution details, your app studio details, front end hosting details, and identity details. All the details this is taking up from for you. Now, in configurations, what you can see is this is kind of a config file for your dev version. This is taking up the resource base name. This right now it is not of your concern, but basically I'll just explain you. In meeting dev is a name and it is adding a suffix to it. And this suffix it is getting from this file. As you can see, this suffix. So this is how you can identify. This suffix is unique. You can remove it, keep it empty, or anything you can keep it. But this is what I did. I typed in this suffix and I was able to differentiate that, okay, these resources were created with this suffix. That is why it is using that suffix file. So now in configurations, you got your base name, which already tied up with that suffix. Other part is configuration for your app. So when you add your app, which is a tab into your Teams channel or group chat or any of the meeting, how would you start? How would you see that application, right? That is the main point. So this is how your application name will look like. It is Hello World in Meeting app. And the full name is also same. You can add more parameters as well, which is description and everything. But right now I have kept it simple. Only app name is added. And this is what it is doing is we are adding a manifest version here. So this app name and full name will be taken up from this file in, and it will be showing it to the manifest. That is why we are maintaining it differently. For local, same, and project settings is basically all your project information. So for this app, what all I have did, I have added a solution for Azure, and what all capabilities right now the solution is holding only tab. If I add more capabilities, you can add it in a array by separating that. So this is how you can add bot or any different capabilities. So don't forget to do that whenever you add new feature, add the capabilities here. Right now it is holding just a tab. These are the different plugins which already were provided with. We did not add anything. These plugins are provided by Microsoft Teams Toolkit. Next, the components. As we correctly talked about what component we are using, tab, right? And tab is using a storage account. So this is how the storage account was deployed to our tab, to our Azure, and this is how it will be stored. This is the Azure storage. Connections is using this. Provision is set to true. And the name for the different provisioning, there are two things which we provision. One is identity and the storage account. These two were added in the components. So now let's go ahead and see the tabs folder. This is the main folder wherein you can go ahead and add all your coding pattern, coding structure or logic. Now let me hide that FX and let's just go to tabs. In tabs, you will have to navigate to SRC, and then in the components, you will start seeing all the file components. Definitely one is your app.jx. So what we are doing is, this is a main file. You can say a parent file or parent component wherein I have added a router. This router is routing to the different components. These are the child components. So my main parent is app, and when I click on the app, I can have the flexibility to show privacy, terms of use, configuration, and tab component. These all four components will start showing up once your app is loaded. Now what happens is, once the router routes, and it will go to this privacy path, right? So privacy is altogether a small child component wherein I have just added a privacy statement in a React. This is just a simple React, nothing fancy. Configuration is basically your tab configuration. So what I'm doing is, in the tab configuration, you can have your tab display name. You can update it from here. You can have the entity ID. This entity ID either can be anything unique, or you can provide any entity ID. Content URL is basically your iframe, which is holding your tab. So this is the content URL till/tab. So what happens is, if you have the base URL and you add it index.html hash and tab, this final URL will hold your tab contents. That iframe will hold it. Now what happens is, whenever you click on your application and the app you are trying to add to the meeting, it will ask you to save the configuration or cancel it. So this is what we are doing here. We are using save event handler, and on verifying that, I am just showing the details. Let's just check that in action so that you get a better understanding. What I'll do is, I'll go to my app store. I'll add my Hello World in Meeting app. So this is how the app will look like. I show that I think we are already on top of time, but I'll quickly show add to a meeting. So what I'm doing is, I add this app to a meeting, which is kind of a group chat meeting with an admin. I'll add it. You should see a configuration screen. So this is the configuration screen which we were talking about. This is the tab configuration, and you will see a save and back button. These are the save handlers which we are using right now. This is the save register on save handler, which Teams.js already provides. So we are using that. And when I click on save, it will save that and it will show me the tab data. This is how your tab looks like. And did you notice that my tab name is my tab? Why? Because I did not update the tab name from config. Yeah. Here you can update your tab name based on the scenario, whichever you are using. Let's say you are pulling the data from Contoso, Northwinders, or anything, any business case. Whatever you're doing, you can update your app or a client name or the application name. Let's say my timesheet or my reminders, get me those data. So everything you can change it from here. And once you change it, or you will start seeing that change into your Teams tab here. Okay. So now let's go back to the code. What data we are seeing here is, I see an in-meeting app sample, the logged in username and the meeting ID. So right now, if you observe that, how am I getting this meeting ID? I have to write a code, right? How this is populating the Teams data in the Teams context. So what we are doing is, you have to go to the tab.jsx. There is a SDK you have to use, which is a Teams.js SDK. This will provide you the details of that whenever this tab or bot or any data or any application or extension app application which you are creating, if you want to get the context of the teams, then you will have to use teams.js SDK. And what it will do is, using get context, you can just, for your demo purpose, what you can do is you can just console that context of your teams, just like how I did. I have added meeting ID using the context. I'm displaying that, and the logged in user details, I'm displaying that. This something like this. If you want to see what all details the Teams JavaScript library provides, there are multiple details, just like where your tab is hosted. It is in meeting, or it is not in meeting, or it is a personal app, or everything. It will provide you whether it is a group type of app or personal, something like that. And this is what UI in UI you were seeing. I was able to get the meeting ID from the context. This is how I was able to get it. User principal name stored in username variable. This is how I was displaying it, and a simple data in header in meeting app sample. So this is how you can deploy or create your apps. So this is the main. So now after your app JSX, which is your main file, these are the child components inside the route. In tab, you can have multiple, you can also provide different components, child components. Maybe there is one component which is just showing all your meeting data. One component is all showing all your files used in the meeting. You can do that, and you can show it in the return section here. But don't forget to use teams.js library, because if you want to get the values from the context, or in the user's context, so you have to make use of it. This is how your component structure is structurized in the app structure. So now, what else we are missing here is one important thing: build. So build is definitely, whenever I'll build the solution or npm run build, your build will be, you will have a latest build of your code structure. And one important thing which we are missing is app package. Let's just go. Yeah, manifest file. So now, as you can see, this is my manifest file, and this is the heart of the application which is hosted in Teams. You can see the sample manifest, I mean this JSON, which is using the schema of Microsoft Teams.schema.json version 1.14. It is holding the manifest version. So let's say, what I can do is I can add some different identities here. Let's say resource, or if I want to add permissioning, or if I want to add some different entities into my this manifest, what you can do is, then manifest will have to be updated. You can't deploy the manifest with the same version number. If you are updating the manifest file with anything, then make sure you bump the version of the manifest version, this version name, this version number, I mean, if you have to bump it by zero, on the complexity of how small or big the change is. Just bump the version and then deploy it, so that your changes gets reflected. Now, what is ID? ID is a Teams app ID. This is the main thing, important thing. This ID differentiates each application in itself. Package name is just a package name, to understand this is a Teams extension. Developer information, this is your name, website URL, privacy URL, terms of use URL. This is for the one who is who is going to be your organization details. Icons, definitely, which I mentioned, you will have to deploy it. You will have two icons. One is color and outline. You'll have to add that path here. Name of your app, which we already added in the configuration. So I'm grabbing that from config. Description, you can grab it from config, or you can directly add it, the string here. Color, I am keeping it the random color right now, which is the default color. Bots, right now I don't have any bots in my solution, so it is an empty array. Extensions, I don't have any. Configurable tabs. So there is two things. Either it can be a static tab or configurable tab. Right now, we are hosting a tab in a group chat or a team. That is what is configurable tab. If you are hosting your personal scoped app, then it will be a static tab. These are how the configurable tabs details you'll find. So this is the configuration URL, which will hold your config path, because you want your user to configure your app, right? You can add that configuration page here. Can update configuration? Yes, I'm keeping it true, because I want the configuration to be updated. Scopes, as I mentioned, for configurable tab, you can have scopes as team, group chat, and in which context I am deploying this app, in the meeting context. So I've added all the meetings, meeting chat tab, details tab, side panel, so that I can have this app across my meeting layer, meeting extensions. as a meeting extension. Permissions, right now I am only adding one permission, which is message team members permission. Rest, if you have a graph API already using here, then you'll have to add multiple permissions in here. Valid domains, if you are using some URLs which you want to whitelist, you can add those into your valid domains part. If you are not adding that, then you will not be able to see your app getting that details on the URL. So you make sure that add your URLs into the valid domain. So this is how your app package looks like. So what we'll do is we'll quickly provision in the cloud. I'll provision it. This will provision the details for me. I'll view the command bar terminal. Yeah. Yeah. So as you can see, what is happening on click of provisioning is it is running some of the scripts for me. I haven't added any scripts which it needs to run. Previously, we had to write npm run build, npm run building, and then packaging the solution, and then every step we had to take. Now, with just one click, you are provisioning your Azure. You are deploying Azure provisioning resources to your Azure. So let's just quickly see that. So right now, if you see, I'll refresh. It should be in deploying. Yeah, it is deploying. So once it is deployed, you will start seeing that here. And till then, I'll quickly cover the side loading part. So what happens is side loading means you go to your Teams admin center, into your setup policies for your any of the custom policies if you have, or else global org wide, which is the default one. Make sure that you have upload custom apps toggle as on. If this is off, then you will not be able to upload custom apps to your organization, Teams organization. So this is what side loading means. Next, this is one way to check if your custom apps is on or not. If you are not a Teams admin, and if you just have the package and you want to deploy that, how you can do is you can just go to the chat. This is the meeting, and I will go to the apps from here. Yeah, I'll click on this. I'll go to manage your apps. So what happens is this is, let's say, a meeting, right? This is a meeting chat. Here you can see all the applications which I'm using in the meeting. I can upload a custom app, and this can be your any zip file which you have created, right? You can take up the zip file from here. I'll quickly grab it for dev version, and it will store it in my local address. I'll pick this link. I will go to it, and I'll upload a custom app. And as you can see, yep, this is added, and I will just quickly add. If you are not a Teams admin, you can do it this way. And how you will see upload a custom app only when the side loading is enabled for you. So now you can see there are 3 applications added. And what I can do is I can quickly go ahead and click on this. I can just go to the chat and add a tab. Now my tab will have the hello world meeting, and I will save the configuration, and here it goes. So this is how you can upload your custom apps using side loading enabled. So this difference you can make out very well. You won't be able to see upload a custom app button for you enabled unless and until side loading is enabled. So let's just go ahead and see our Azure resources. Yeah. So as you can see, the 2 resources are now deployed for me, and this is the meeting tab. And let's just see the container which where the code is added in the web version. You can see the static file here. You can, in the JavaScript, you will be able to see all the files. This is the JavaScript, and this is the build version. So you will not see your exact code. It is taking the build version of the app and it is deploying it here. Next thing, what you have to do is, I have just provisioned in the cloud, and let me just make a quick change in the application. In the src file, in the tab.jsx, welcome. I will just quickly add one simple change. Yeah. And I will add Reactor. Yeah. Now I made this change. Now should I provision in the cloud again? No. Provisioning is just for your Azure resources. You don't have to provision it for provision is only for Azure resources. While you have making the changes in the deployment or development, all you have to do is you have to deploy to the cloud. This will take the latest build and it will take up your code and it will reflect on your teams as soon as. So you can debug it right away. What happens is deploying just take fraction of seconds, and once it is deployed, all you have to do is all you have to go to your solution, refresh it, and it will start showing up the updated values. And then by inspecting, you can check out whether things are working fine or not. Then you can figure that out. So let's just quickly give it a moment and see. Yeah, my app is deployed. Now I will publish it to Teams. So publishing to Teams is two ways. So if you see here, install for organization or manually submit. Manually submit is you will get a zip package which you can take up and add it again. But ideally, when you're working or developing, it is recommended that you can't keep on updating the zip package, right? You have to take the latest always. So make sure that you install for organization. And when installing an organization, what you can do is you can go to your Teams admin center, manage apps, and you can find your app here. I take search. Yeah. So as you can see, my app is already added. It should have the version 1.0.0 because I did not make any changes in the manifest. So I do not have to publish that to Teams now because I don't have any changes. So what I can do is I can just go ahead and refresh, reload. I'm not sure which is the correct tab. There are so many. Yeah. As this is not the correct one. In meeting app sample, I need to check which is the correct one, but let me just pull that up that time. I'm not sure why it is not responding, but ideally it will always, once the deployment is done, then it will take up the latest changes and it will deploy it to your teams. It will start reflecting it. So you don't have to worry about it. Maybe I have multiple packages, so I'm not able to get the correct one. So this is how your Teams toolkit looks like, and you can play with it. You can start developing the applications on top of it. And if you have any more queries and concerns, we are ready to take that up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shrushti. That was a wonderful in-depth demo on creating of tabs and getting the provision and a lot of aspects. So yeah, before we take up the questions, Shruti, would you also like to come in the front? So we have a couple of questions and then we can take it up.
Yeah, I'm already.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
All
can't
right, great.
turn on my
No
camera.
worries. Okay, so one question that I had was anybody can take it up.
Yeah.
So the question was, can we host Team application on SharePoint, or how can we use SharePoint web parts as Team tab? Any take on it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Siddharth.
Okay, yeah. So yes, so first question is, can we host Teams application on SharePoint? The only way to host your Teams application into SharePoint, which is Teams tab, and that can only be done if you are creating your Teams tab using SPFx based, using SPFx framework. Okay, so the thing what you have to do is when you are creating your SPFx web part, within the SPFx web part in the manifest file, there is a flag where you can say that what are the supported hosts within which you have to put at Microsoft Teams. And then once you package your SPFX web part, you deploy it in your app catalog, basically, which is a tenant level app catalog. And within the tenant level app catalog, there is a button which says, sync to team. So what it would do is it would basically package that web part as with the manifest file the way it has to do, and then it will deploy that web part into Teams app source within your organization. Okay, it won't be able to do it out in the Microsoft app source, but within your organization it would be there. And then the employees or users of your teams within that organization would be able to add that tab in anywhere, like in the normal way they are doing it. So that is how you would be able to host your Teams application built using SPFX web part as in Teams tab. Hope that answers.
Hope the tech robbers got his question right. If not, you can
Just
definitely
one more
reach out.
thing.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
Shruti.
Yeah, just one more thing I would like to add. So just like how you can or take up your SharePoint framework applications and you can use them across teams. Similarly, you can create if you build one application which is either a Teams application, and then you can use it across different capabilities like Outlook, Office as well. So all it takes is just you have to update your manifest file. That will do wonder, and it will host your application which was created for Teams into your Outlook or Office as an Office app. So just wanted to add that.
That's an excellent point, Shrishti. Yeah, so moving on to the next question. Is there any consideration while building tabs for Android or iOS Microsoft Team clients for the mobile, or is it the same process?
I can take that up. I do have some experience around that. The consideration more or less which you would have to do is in and around considering the screen size version while building the user
Mm,
interface of your Teams application, right? It should be responsive in nature, and depending on whether it is Android or iOS, you might have to do certain use certain CSS properties which are
Correct.
applicable. Okay. Plus there is one thing wherein because of some advanced or extra security features for an iOS app, you might have to, once you want to implement a deep link, you might have want to do some extra configuration there, which is basically registering your Teams client ID or the Teams app client ID into developer program. Okay, that is how the official documentation says if the deep link doesn't work, but without that also it works. Okay, so this is just an kind of my personal experience that yes, it says that it has to do certain configuration, but deep link does work. But yes, there would be certain things which you might have to do, but depending on what you are doing, it would work. But more or less it works very well with no matter which you will do, if you take care of the responsiveness of the UI.
okay. Any take on it, Shrishti?
I think Siddharth covered it well.
Okay, great. I think one last question we have before we wind up. So it's a very general question. Even I sometimes kind of think about it, or if it's a newbie, when do we really actually opt for a personal or a channel tab? In which scenarios I go for this?
Yeah, I can take that up. So personal apps are basically when you have an app created for a personalized scenario. Like let's say you are a user and you want to see every detail related to you, and maybe it is kind of any data, your meetings, your tasks or anything. Then it is recommended that you create your personal apps because it is personal scoped. Channel tabs are basically when you interact with a group of people or in a team, or you want let's say a forms is a best example, forms polls. When you want multiple users to come and interact over that application, then it is best that you create your tabs which are configurable tabs, and it can be used across your channels as well. And definitely you can maintain your different role based access screens. Let's say some users are from HR department, some users are from different technology department. They will see the content from those content related to those sections. So that is when you have to use.
All right. Thanks, Shrishti. So that any views on it?
No, I think she covered pretty well. Yes, basically for the
All right.
personalized thing, you do personal apps versus if you want to have something which is collaborative feature, you create a tab.
All right. Great. All right. I think we've come to the end of the session where we kind of deep dived almost 1 hour, 15 minutes on tabs, the importance of it, how to deploy it, how to check the Azure provisioning, a lot of nitty gritty features which Shrishti kind of pointed out that really kind of helps you where to find the app ID, how to modify it, and the deploying part. A lot of things to understand. So definitely this will be live streamed on the YouTube. You can watch it. And before I leave, we have few more announcements to be made. We have a next Teams Toolkit Tuesday event coming on May 2nd. The link will be posted in the description so you can follow the link and get yourself registered. And we also have the Team Toolkit Cloud Skill Challenge, which Siddharth announced. Uh, we have another 8 to 10 days for it. So go ahead, register, go through the learn path, and go through the challenge, and you have an awesome prizes waiting for you. So yeah, good luck with the challenge, and thank you, Siddharth and Shruti, so much for the awesome session and being a part of the Team's Elite team member. And always glad to have your sessions on these series. And if you want to catch offline with these amazing MVP folks, Their social handles are being shared, and you can definitely connect with them offline and get your questions clarified or understand how this MVP process is or their experience working with M365. So, looking forward to the future sessions. Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you, Shrushti, and thanks, Reactor team. Have a nice
Thanks, Kamal.
evening.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy to be part of it.